Back in the 90s, things were a whole new ballgame. Well, this was the period where some of the most unique and imaginative ideas, which in turn led to a number of horror television shows that fans hold near and dear to date. While many of these shows were fun to watch, some were, mind you, genuinely terrifying, capable of giving every adult in the audience the creeps. With today's video, let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we? And also, since our list is an exciting compilation of 28 major horror television shows of the 90s, we suggest you sleep tonight with the lights on. Without further ado, let's dive straight into the video. Just before we get into the explanation though, we do have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin. Are You Afraid of the Dark? 1992. Believe us when we say this, Are You Afraid of the Dark was one of the scariest television shows, especially during its run. This anthological fantasy series began each episode with a group of teenagers who addressed themselves as the Midnight Society. In every episode, viewers would find these teenagers sitting at some secret location in the woods. Then, one of the members would sprinkle a handful of midnight dust into the campfire and begin their allegorical horror tale for the evening. The actual story, and not the telling, was featured to the audience. Created by DJ McHale and Ned Candle, the children's horror anthological TV series, which is currently over 3 decades old, aired on Nickelodeon from 1992 to 96. The whole premise of a group of kids heading into the woods, making a campfire and narrating horror stories is not only attention-grabbing, but it also builds up quite an atmosphere. From maniacal jesters and haunted homes to murderous demons and ghouls in the swimming pools, the series, which was initially supposed to be titled Scary Tales, has covered everything. Are You Afraid of the Dark conclusively happens to be one hell of a show, with episodes such as The Frozen Ghost, The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner, The Tale of the Dollmaker, The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, and The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle, among others to remember.
New series of Goosebumps videos that will creep you out.
Goosebumps, 1995. R.L. Stine, who has often been referred to as the Stephen King of children's literature, adapted his best-selling series of horror novels, Goosebumps, into the popular children's anthology horror TV series, also titled the same. Having premiered on the Fox Kids network in October 1995, the television series, which ended up spawning 4 seasons, usually had young teenagers finding themselves in the midst of the most frightening of situations. Now, when we say situations, no points for guessing that these would primarily involve the supernatural, the paranormal, and at times even the occult. Like every other successful television series, Goosebumps had its share of good as well as bad episodes, but there are some solid self-contained horror entries that really stand out. If you ask us, episodes such as Night of the Living Dummy 2, Stay Out of the Basement, Say Cheese and Die, The Werewolf of Beaver Swamp, Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, and The Ghost Next Door effectively managed to scare the living daylights out of every one of us. It's only fair to say, with Goosebumps, Stine's most well-regarded stories were meticulously brought to the living rooms of every budding horror fan of the 90s. The X-Files, 1993. Full credits to Chris Carter for coming up with the science fiction drama TV series that had so many people worldwide scared of what lay beneath their beds. Agree with us when we tell you that it's rather difficult to disregard the legacy of the X-Files, especially when you have a lineup of 218 episodes along with 2 standalone films. The series mainly centered around 2 FBI agents, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully, probing deeper into the eponymous X-Files, which are basically marginalized, unresolved cases involving paranormal phenomena. While Mulder happens to be someone who believes in the existence of the supernatural, Scully, on the other hand, is a skeptic who believes there is scientific explanation for everything. It's been over 30 years since the X-Files first aired, and the TV series has somehow managed to make a lasting impression on its viewers. Straddling across 11 series, the X-Files, with its diverse array of exceptionally terrifying monsters, can send chills down the spine to this date. Starting from Bruce Campbell as Wayne Weinsider in the episode Terms of Endearment, the creature Ghoulie in the episode titled Ghoulie, and the horrifying Peacock family in Home, as well as the monstrous Ubermensch in Arcadia and the mutant serial killer Virgil Incanto in Too Shy. The X-Files has given its audience plenty of reasons to pull up the blankets and sleep with the lights on.
And here.
The Outer Limits, 1995. Here's addressing every fan of the 1960s cult show of the same name. You have every reason to like the modern revival that aired on Showtime, Sci-Fi, and in syndication from 1995 to 2002. Maintaining the tradition of the classic sci-fi horror anthology show, The Outer Limits displayed a multitude of different actors with distinct story episodes, each delving into supernatural themes with twist endings. The series also featured several episodes containing plot threads that eventually linked one episode with the other, spanning across 7 seasons with 152 exhilarating episodes, The Outer Limits is still fondly remembered for its scientifically accurate projection of the unknown possibilities of the frightening imminent future. Also, Kevin Conway did a fantastic job as the narrator of the series. His foreboding voice and the eerie background music of the revamped intro usually worked in favour of the television series. Also, episodes such as Afterlife, The Deprogrammers and A New Life certainly deserve mentions amongst others. Tales from the Crypt, 1989 to 1996. Now, there's no denying that horror series have excited TV fans for a very long time now, and that brings us to the most popular horror anthology television series, Tales from the Crypt, which has somehow managed to remain the medium's most successful show to this date. Based on the 1950s gruesome EC Comics series of the same name, this darkly comedic horror anthology series had wisecracking corpse, or in other words, the mouldering Crypt Keeper, narrating epic tales of the macabre to his beloved boils and ghouls. Spanning across 7 seasons and generating 93 blood-curdling episodes, Tales from the Crypt was irrefutably famous for several reasons. First things first, how can we ever disregard the memorable host who in reality was a sinister ghoul obsessed with sardonic humour and terrifying puns. Voiced by the celebrated John Cassier, the Crypt Keeper was delightfully creepy, and it's safe to say that he was unquestionably the high point of the whole series. Next, every episode on display was meticulously crafted into 30 minutes of sheer terror, pushing the margins of what mainstream television would otherwise feature. Last but not least, the forces behind every episode had this fiery, exuberant passion, which eventually led them to deliver spectacular episodes at the end of the day. Ghost Stories, 1997. Now, who does not remember the supernatural anthology TV series hosted by the extremely popular Rip Torn that had each episode having on display what would be fittingly called an unusually chilling tale? With the series having completed 23 years since it first aired on the Family Channel, one can still not forget Rip Torn's introduction segment, or in his words, "Come with me into the very cradle of darkness." Unlike the other anthology TV series mentioned, this show was far more serious, with stories that weren't just creepy but also creative, touching, and thought-provoking in their own manner. While the highlight of Ghost Stories will always be Rip Torn as the compelling commentator, and there's no denying that episodes such as Cold in the Grave, Personal Demons, All Night Diner, It's Only a Movie, and Winner Takes All certainly deserve special mention.
I just know something bad is going to happen.
Courage the Cowardly Dog, 1999. Initially created as a 7-minute animated short known as The Chicken from Outer Space, creator John R. Dilworth first introduced the character of Courage back in 1996. With the segment nominated for an Academy Award, it ultimately caught the attention of the Cartoon Network, and the rest, as you all know, is history. Spanning across 4 seasons, each consisting of 13 episodes, this top-rated comedy horror TV series revolved around an anthropomorphic dog living with an elderly couple in a farmhouse in the fictional town of Nowhere in Kansas. Every episode has the trio thrown into exceedingly freakish and unsettling paranormal situations, and it's always up to our titular character to save the day. Part of what made Courage the Cowardly Dog's horror slapstick work was the sheer anarchy. For instance, this particular TV show was never what you thought it would be, and because of that, the series effectively managed to combine both elements of dread and comedy in a way that wasn't only exclusive but also surprising. Dilworth's animated show was chiefly known for its subversive dark visual horror, its surreal humour, and to add to this, a diverse array of some absolutely petrifying, horror-striking villains. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, 1997. Joss Whedon's supernatural drama TV series, which is often listed amongst the greatest TV series of all time, has Buffy Summers, a vampire slayer who's trying to live an everyday life in high school, only to end up embracing her fate as the chosen one and battling against vampires, demons, and other infernal creatures. Thankfully, she's not alone in her mission to save the world, and is often aided in her quest by a circle of loyal friends known as the Scooby Gang. The high point of the series categorically is Sarah Michelle Gellar as its titular character, and it shouldn't surprise you that Sarah Michelle Gellar was even nominated for a Golden Globe Award for her brilliant performance in the show. No wonder the series was a big hit, which in due course led to many novels, spin-offs, comics, and dare we say, video games. In case you haven't watched the series, and we highly doubt if there exists one person who's yet to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there are 7 seasons with 144 power-packed episodes for you to enjoy the escapades of Buffy and the gang. Eerie, Indiana, 1991. Jose Rivera and Carl Schaefer's Eerie, Indiana had on display the characteristic traits of a small town where something always felt ominous. Boasting a total of 19 episodes, this short-lived horror science fiction TV series centers on teenager Marshall Teller, who has just moved with his family to the small rural town of Eerie in Indiana. With Marshall realizing the strange things are constantly occurring in his new hometown, he starts to probe deeper into the matter along with his sidekick and best friend Simon Holmes. When you have Joe Dante as the creative consultant for the show, you know for a fact that the TV show will eventually become a cult phenomenon. The whole concept of uncanny things happening in a small town is not something new, but it's what the show does with the idea that Eerie, Indiana stands out from the crowd. Every episode on display contains a new mystery and has the children mainly dealing with terrifying situations. Eerie stays true to Marshall's description of the town, which in his works is the center of weirdness for the entire planet. Also, one of the primary things that work in favor of the series is how the show takes bizarre plot lines and makes them oddly plausible. We give you one instance, and believe us when we tell you that the women of Eerie like to seal themselves inside giant Tupperware tubs so that they remain young and fresh forever. While it does sound ludicrous, it works wonders for Eerie, Indiana. Tales from the Crypt Keeper, 1993 to 1999. Based on HBO's Tales from the Crypt and intended for children, this animated horror children's TV series was significantly milder than the live-action counterpart, and it goes without saying that the content on display was majorly toned down to be more suitable for the show's target audience. Maintaining the essence of the popular horror anthology TV series Tales from the Crypt Keeper had the Crypt Keeper narrating kid-friendly horror stories, even with a teachable lesson to his viewers. Even with the Crypt Keeper animated and his acting more light-hearted, he still looked creepy. John Cassier reprised his role as the Crypt Keeper, but here his character taught lessons of right and wrong, shedding light on the consequences it had when one chose wrong over right, all the while keeping in mind that the show was aimed at kids at the end of the day. In fact, if we're not wrong, a child psychologist was also present at the time to approve the scripts and ensure that they weren't too scary for the target audience. Speaking of the episodes on display, they were intriguing, self-contained stories aimed at children that focused on bullying and fitting in amongst their other subjects. Extreme Ghostbusters, 1997. If you call yourself an admirer of the Emmy-nominated The Real Ghostbusters, chances are that you may not have liked its sequel series. Extreme Ghostbusters aired in 1997, producing 40 thrilling episodes, each featuring paralyzing monsters that no one thought could ever exist in the first place. The series followed quests of the next generation Ghostbusters, busy hunting down and capturing ghosts all over New York, and the new team is led by none other than our beloved Dr. Egon Spengler. Not only did this animated series dedicate much more time and energy to carving out a special place in the Ghostbuster franchise, but it was also prudent enough to assemble a pretty developed analysis of the horrors of life, death and beyond. Given the solitary fact that Extreme Ghostbusters did move away from the original supernatural comic setting and yet had this renewed darker feel on display, shows how the series was way ahead of its time. But if you ask us, the series' high point was that, undoubtedly, the disturbing, horrifying monsters they had. To everyone thinking that cartoons can't be terrifying, we urge you to watch Deadliners, the 5th episode of the series, and then decide for yourself. Poltergeist The Legacy, 1996. Richard Barton Lewis's Poltergeist The Legacy is centered around members of a secret society known as the Legacy and their efforts to protect humankind from supernatural and occult dangers. In fact, the whole premise of a privileged secret society living in an ancient castellated mansion on a private island had viewers intrigued in the first place. Straddling across 4 seasons with 88 episodes, Poltergeist The Legacy, which ran from 1996 to 1999, soon developed a massive cult following. Mind you, in no way is this horror TV series even closely related to the Poltergeist film franchise, and the only thing that binds the two is the name, and that's it. Coming back to the series, it has everything from drama, suspense and horror to sci-fi, and even the occasional romances in between. The cast deserve a special mention too, as they make the characters seem believable. In short, one has every reason to get hooked on this TV series.
Happy birthday, Sarah!
Bone Chillers, 1996. Created by Adam Rifkin, Bone Chillers is based on the series of children's horror fiction novels, also by the same name, by Betsy Haynes. The storyline has a quartet of freshmen at the Edgar Allan Poe High School handling the usual pressures of keeping pace with the popular kids, and to add to this, also getting entangled in what seems to be the strangest of occurrences. While it's true that the show was primarily for children, one cannot disregard the fact that it was highly well made, funny, and most importantly had a fresh perspective on things. No wonder this show had people of all ages end up appreciating Bone Chillers, which featured 13 exciting episodes. Also, the series was very similar, particularly in style and tone, to the Goosebumps series, and that is something that worked wonders for the show. Freaky Stories, 1997. Created and developed by Stephen Schneier and John A. Delmange, this popular Canadian animated anthology TV series was hosted by two unforgettable animatronic puppets, Larry the Bug and Morris the Maggot. The setting was this 1940s era diner, or Ted's Diner to be more specific, where horrifying tales of urban legends were narrated. Freaky Stories stood out for a couple of reasons. For starters, the tales narrated always had happened to a friend. Next, even though the series was animated, it was effectively scary and gripping and full of twists, making it even more difficult to stop binging. Spanning across 3 seasons and 35 episodes, Freaky Stories told the most terrifying tales while simultaneously having on display the most incredible animation. Real Monsters, 1994. Developed by Klasky Csupo for Nickelodeon, this animated TV series focused on a trio of young monsters, Ickis, Oblina and Crumb, who attended the Monster Academy under a city dump in order to learn the art of frightening humans. Spanning across 4 seasons with a total of 52 interesting episodes, many of the segments centered on the wacky stunts of the monsters, post making it to the surface to perform scares, which were basically class assignments. The highlight of Real Monsters irrefutably happens to be the 3 young monster characters. Not only were they such well-developed characters, but they were also voiced and animated to perfection. In fact, the whole style and design of the monsters was so unique, and the sole fact that the show had such an entertaining concept worked wonders in favour of the series. We agree that this series was a Nickelodeon cartoon at the end of the day, but having said that, the viewers did have their fair share of absolute horror with grotesque-looking characters too. Monster Vision, 1999. Monster Vision was an American variety series that underwent a couple of changes since it first began to air in 1991 until 2000. From the year 1996 till the show's cancellation in 2000, Monster Vision was hosted by Joe Bob Briggs and had on display the older classic horror and schlock movies from the 1970s till the 1990s. It was in the year 1999 that the entire program became styled as Joe Bob's Hollywood Saturday Night and Monster Vision. Of course, the highlight of Monster Vision happens to be Joe Bob Briggs, and might we add here that he's one of the most memorable hosts to ever exist. Because Briggs is brilliant, so was his show, and there's no denying that. Briggs and his choice of movies made so many viewers endure their tough Saturday nights. If we're being honest, the real reason one watched Monster Vision was because of the wisecracks Briggs would make about the flicks, and those who would have seen the series will agree with us on that. The show was a real treat back then, and a sheer delight for every horror fan out there. Forever Night, 1992. Well, who does not remember this Canadian TV series about an 800-year-old vampire employed as a homicide detective in Toronto Police Force? Created by Barney Cohen and James D. Parriott, the show was an exciting and intelligent take on vampire mythology. So we have Nick Knight working the graveyard shift with his partner, and most of his colleagues are unaware of Nick's true identity as a vampire, except for the beautiful medical examiner Natalie Lambert. Nick is remorseful about his past, especially with him spending centuries as a cold-hearted vampire, and therefore he's seen serving as a policeman at times, resorting to his special powers to bring criminals to justice. As we move ahead with the storyline, Nick's quest for redemption tends to become more complex when fellow vampires start to arrive in the city, throwing obstacles in his path as he strives to reach his ultimate goal, which is to become human once again. What was remarkable about this supernatural detective series here is that it was a one-of-a-kind show, which literally had no loose threads. Spanning across 3 seasons with 70 attention-grabbing episodes, Forever Night gave its audience a fantastic viewing experience, with one entertaining episode after another. From well-written scripts and Albert J. Dunk's cinematography to a solid cast and Fred Mullen's beautiful background score, every aspect of the series was taken care of with the utmost of precision. If you fancy vampires and the genre and can't get enough of them, give Forever Night a shot if possible. Angel, 1999 TV series, created by David Greenwald in collaboration with Joss Whedon, the man who created Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Angel, which was basically a spin-off of Buffy, aired on the WB, straddling across 5 seasons with 110 episodes. This supernatural TV series depicted the continuing trials of a vampire, Angel, whose soul was apparently restored to him by a curse as some form of retribution for the murder of one of their very own. This eventually has Angel afflicted with guilt, remorse, as he makes up his mind to help the helpless by reinstating their faith and serving the souls of those who seem to have lost their way. Often regarded as one of the best television spin-off series of all time, Angel has time and again been commended for the characters, their performances, and the overall darker tone of this series. It's very rare when someone gets to witness a spin-off that's considered better than the series it came from, and in this case, Angel surely looked like it hit the jackpot. Everything about the series was spectacular, be it the thought-out story arcs, fleshed-out characters, direction, or even the special effects. We highly recommend you watch this one.
Someone's at the door. Someone's at the door.
American Gothic, 1995. Created by Sean Cassidy and produced by Sam Raimi, the events of American Gothic take place in the quiet, seemingly quaint town of Trinity, where everything is not what it seems. The storyline primarily revolves around Caleb Temple and the town's charming yet crooked sheriff Lucas Black. Unbeknownst to many, Black happens to be a murderous rapist who's seen resorting to supernatural powers and making use of demonic powers to wipe out anyone who dares stand in his path. The twist comes when we, as the audience, learn that Caleb has powers too. Not only did American Gothic have an intriguing premise, but the series also bragged a great cast. For starters, we have Gary Cole as the immoral local sheriff, one who's seen literally breaking any law that he wants, and then simply getting away with it by using supernatural powers. Then we have the talented Lucas Black in the role of Caleb, and he certainly deserves a special mention for his outstanding performance in the show, especially how he stood up against the sheriff, who, might we add, happens to be one of the most frightening characters that we've ever seen on a TV series. Believe us when we tell you American Gothic was unsettling in the best ways, and there's no stopping this horror series from becoming a cult classic in the years that followed. She-Wolf of London, 1990. Also known as Love and Curses, Tom McLaughlin and Mick Garris's television series had American graduate student Randy Wallace travelling to Britain to study mythology. However, upon getting bitten by a werewolf while spending a night on the moors, Randy is unable to escape her inevitable fate. Randy's curse eventually draws the attention of several supernatural creatures, and she is seen probing deeper into the supernatural phenomena along with her love interest, who happens to be none other than her British professor Ian Matheson. Together they are seen exploring mythology and attempting to seek a cure for her curse. It's only fair to address She-Wolf of London as this old-style romantic comedy with generous doses of horror elements. Those who've seen John Landis's An American Werewolf in London are bound to draw similarities and references given the somewhat similar narrative and dark humour approach to the standard supernatural horror formula. A promising blend of horror and comedy, She-Wolf of London had a total of 20 atmospheric, clever and intriguing episodes on display. Brimstone, 1998. Ethan Rife and Cyrus Voris's Brimstone had on display deceased New York City police detective Ezekiel Zeke Stone, who ends up making a deal with the devil. The devil assigns Zeke to capture back 113 prisoners of hell, all of whom have fled to Earth after a massive jail breakout. If Zeke is successful in returning all the escaped souls to hell, he gets another chance at life on Earth. Well, if only heavenly redemption were that easy. Brimstone is undoubtedly a lost treasure from the 90s. This is a series that featured the wittiest innuendos with exceedingly captivating storylines. Both the leading characters Zeke and the devil deserve special mention, and may we add that Peter Horton and John Glover were simply outstanding. As ardent fans of the show, we firmly believe Brimstone should have been given more of a time to build an audience before they pulled the plug and said goodbye to innovation and originality. A Scare at Bedtime, 1997. When this was first commissioned by the Irish Public Service Broadcaster RTE to block a 10-minute gap that was usually left before the 11 o'clock news, it became a cautionary tale with a dark twist. Created by Kieran Morrison and Mick O'Hara, the Irish television show, which ran from 1997 to 2006, featured two puppets, Podge and Rog, as the very hosts of a spooky tale and urban myths comedy show. Every episode generally followed a similar pattern. Rog, who was basically the dumber of the duo and also short short, ugly and a pervert, would arrive home, after which he and the pipe-smoking, well-dressed Podge would either go to bed or sit at the kitchen talking about things. While Rog would usually talk about what he was up to, Podge would end up insulting Rog and eventually narrate a story. The story was what was played out by the live actors, and the plot would usually be about people meeting unpleasant ends. It's only fair to address A Scare at Bedtime as a classic that will never age. The whole concept of taking traditional urban legends and giving them an Irish twist worked wonders, eventually leading to A Scare at Bedtime to win the Irish Film and Television Academy Awards for Best Entertainment Show.
Believe me, our free-range days are over.
Ultraviolet, 1998. The 6-episode British TV series starred Jack Davenport as Detective Sergeant Michael Caulfield, who is inadvertently thrust into the hellish world of vampires upon discovering a secret paramilitary vampire hunting organisation while investigating the mysterious disappearance of his partner, who went missing on the eve of the latter's wedding. Ultraviolet was a high-concept series that creator Joe Ahern had envisioned in the first place with the hopes of purposefully keeping it short. The vampires featured in the series are the show's high points. They're stealthy, seductive, subtle, and also in their best scheming form. Next comes the acting, which is absolutely solid, by the way. All you need to give this series is 10 minutes and you'll start to care about the characters on display. Ultraviolet leaves the audience to decide who the bad guys really are, and if you can spare 6 hours from your busy schedule, you can give the series a shot and let us know what you feel by the end of the day. Nightmare Cafe, 1992. Wes Craven and Thomas Baum's short sci-fi series starred Robert Englund, Jack Coleman and Lindsay Frost in the leading roles, based around a strange cafe that has the power to travel from place to place to materialize in any location. And if we're not wrong, the cafe also seems to be sentient on some level, as it's seen taking on a world of its own where random people enter the mysterious all-night cafe, being drawn in by it. It's hard to disregard Nightmare Cafe's particular sense of fantasy and spookiness even after 32 years since its debut. While there's no denying that the overall tone of the series was that of mystical fantasy, it also integrated touches of horror, dark humour and comedy. Nightmare Cafe was a highly imaginative show that explored the whole concept of giving one second chances, so the characters who are seen entering the cafe have all been drawn there by fate, and once they're inside, they're given a chance to reform themselves. Nightmare Cafe was categorically way ahead of its time. Twin Peaks, 1990. David Lynch and Mark Frost's co-creation happens to be one of the most challenging and innovative television shows to have been ever made. The highly popular mystery serial drama follows an investigation of the murder of homecoming queen Laura Palmer in the fictional town of Twin Peaks. The probing is headed by FBI Special Agent Dale Cooper, who is assisted by the local sheriff Harry S. Truman. Of course, nothing is what it seems underneath the pleasant veneer of the quaint small town. Often held as a landmark turning point in TV drama, Twin Peaks garnered a massive cult following for its compelling, dramatic, hilarious and terrifying content. It goes without saying that the show has undoubtedly produced some of the most enthralling episodes one has ever seen. Episodes such as No Knock, No Doorbell, Lonely Souls, The Past Dictates the Future, Beyond Life and Death and Arbitrary Law shattered the boundaries of most television standard dramas. Millennium, 1996. Chris Carter's The X-Files had spawned 2 spin-offs, one of which happened to be the horror television series Millennium. Also created by Carter, the series starred the legendary Lance Henriksen as a former FBI agent who possessed the power to see the world through the eyes of a serial killer and murderers. Spanning across 3 seasons with 67 exciting episodes, the stories were clever, hard-hitting and well told, with Henriksen delivering a fantastic performance. The second season was undoubtedly a lot darker and more disturbing than the first season, but there was no denying that Millennium was a superb show. The series took a plunge, going where no show had ever gone before. It featured splendid sets, a fantastic storyline and some excellent acting. While it's usually The X-Files that's considered a masterpiece by Carter, if you ask us, Millennium is a classic too, and there's no second thoughts about that. The Hunger, 1997. Jeff Fazio's British-Canadian erotic horror anthology series had hosts Terence Stamp and the late David Bowie narrate steamy, erotic and supernatural tales of power, lust, sex and other driving urges. You'll be surprised to know that the series took its name from the 1983 British erotic horror movie, also titled The Hunger, and as initially planned, the show was exclusively going to focus on vampires, but it was eventually decided to expand the horizon of what the term hunger generally stood for and narrate interesting interesting storytelling options. Well done horror-based series are not easy to find, so when one comes across The Hunger, they found it reliably fascinating. Every tale on display, as introduced by the hosts, has managed to bring the audience into its world of unbridled, uninhibited passion. The series is a masterclass in style from directorial legends, straddling across 2 seasons with stimulating episodes. Marvellous verdict. Well, that's all for today, and with this we come to the end of our video here. So which of the ones mentioned was your favourite back then? Also, did your favourite 90s horror television show make it to our list? We'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments section below, and we hope you've got your fill of horror for today. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us as we promise to be back with more exciting content. Until then, goodbye, thanks for watching, have a nice one and stay safe.
Happy birthday, Sarah!